Hi folks, welcome back. Now, it's never been more obvious that the left's panic spiral is now spinning faster than the ceiling fan in a rent-controlled Silver Lake apartment during a heat wave. You think after losing the election, Democrats would regroup with some dignity, but no. Instead, they've decided the real threat to America isn't inflation, it's not open borders, it's not collapsing cities like Los Angeles and all the riots happening. It's Donald Trump stealing your girlfriend, specifically your Latina girlfriend who's getting taken hostage by ICE. Now, that's not satire. That's their actual ad strategy. Apparently, the new Democrat platform is fear, fetishization, and frantic TikTok posting. So buckle up, because today we're dissecting the emotional bribery and political gaslighting that's become standard operating procedure for a party that can't seem to decide if it's selling policies or producing telenovelas.
I had a really good time today.
Yeah, me too. I really look.
What are you doing?
She's coming with us.
What are you talking about? Who are you?
I'm your Republican congressman. Now that we're in charge, we're rounding up illegals.
She was born here. She's a citizen.
I don't care. She looks like one of them. But don't worry.
Jesus
when
Christ.
she's in prison in El Salvador, she'll have lots of company.
Democrats have some really weird ways of communicating their fetishes, because this ad reads more like a strange Freudian slip than an actual representation of reality, because it doesn't reflect any coherent policy that's actually in place. It reflects pure fantasy. A fantasy where Republicans are cartoon villains, stealing girlfriends and deporting brown people based on vibes. It's not just cringe, it's actually revealing. This is what happens when a political movement loses touch with material reality and becomes fully addicted to narrative warfare. The left no longer makes arguments, they just cast roles. You're either the oppressed heroine, the racist villain, or the oblivious NPC. And if your identity doesn't serve their script, they just rewrite it. What we're seeing here is the aftershock of decades of cultural dominance in media, academia, and entertainment, all conditioning people to equate emotional resonance with truth. So instead of debating border policy or voter trust, they crank out the melodrama where the GOP is the boogeyman kicking down your door. It's manipulative, lazy, and worse. It's losing effectiveness because people watch this stuff and they just laugh. They know that if everything is fascism, eventually nothing is. But here's a cold, hard reality Democrats don't want you to know. Nobody is out here kidnapping your Latina girlfriend. That ad, it's not a PSA, it's just straight up political fan fiction. ICE isn't targeting citizens, and they're not deporting people based on skin tone or who they're dating. The raids happening in Los Angeles and other blue cities are focused on illegal aliens with prior records or immigration violations, not women on dates with random soy boy liberal white guys. But the left knows fear works better than facts, so they crank out this emotional bait, hoping you won't notice that their cities are literally on fire because of their own sanctuary policies. So what we're seeing is the end result of decades of narrative-first politics, where Democrats would rather stoke racial paranoia than admit that uncontrolled borders and lawless cities have real consequences. And instead of actually fixing anything, organizations like Progress Action Fund, which apparently funded this ad, just scream fascism every time Trump tries to enforce the law of the land, which, by the way, they refuse to even acknowledge exists. Anyway, since we're on the topic of delusion, let's see what Ilhan Omar recently said.
To be coming out of our country. I mean, I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. What? To have a democracy, a beacon of hope, one of the worst for the world to now be turned into countries where the military are in our streets without any regard for people's constitutional rights. While our president spending millions of dollars propping himself up like a failed dictator with a military parade. It is really shocking, and it should be a wake-up call for all Americans to say this is not the country we were born in. This is not the country we believe in. This is not the country our founding fathers imagined, and this is not the country that is supported by our Constitution, our ideals, our values. And we should all collectively be out in the streets rejecting what is taking place this week.
Does Ilhan Omar know that if she hates America this much, she can just leave? The door's wide open, and it's as easy as packing your bags and making your way down to the airport. But more importantly, What does it say about our culture that someone who fled a failed state was welcomed with open arms into this country, elected to Congress, and given a national platform, now uses it to declare that America is becoming one of the worst countries on earth? This isn't just ungrateful, it's ideological theater. Omar isn't describing reality. She's projecting her disappointment that her worldview isn't winning. The presence of the military during a week of riots and ICE raids in cities like Los Angeles isn't dictatorship. It's a constitutional response to chaos that the left has allowed to be perpetuated with zero pushback, especially because our local leaders refused to maintain order. But the left has trained a generation to see authority as tyranny and self-restraint as oppression. This moment shows just how deeply progressive politics has severed identity from responsibility, where grievance becomes currency, victimhood is just straight up virtue now, and the Constitution is only worth quoting when it serves your narrative. Omar's rant isn't new. It's the byproduct of decades of academic indoctrination, media reinforcement, and gleeful political cowardice. And until that cycle is broken, we'll keep hearing that the freest, most generous country on earth is somehow the villain in this twisted leftist Marxist story. And since we're on that topic, let's check in with Marxist-in-Chief Barack Obama. What's he got to say now that we all wish we could just forget immediately?
But facts are important, because if you can't, and I think one of the most pernicious things that has happened is we have a situation now where we're not just arguing policy or values or opinions, but basic facts are being contested. And that is a problem, because then the marketplace of ideas of the democracy don't work. And we're now in a situation in which we are having these just basic factual arguments. And that further undermines trust. And those in power, those with money, exploit that space in which nobody knows what's true.
Like you?
Vladimir Putin and the KGB
and you
had a saying that was then adopted proudly by Steve Bannon.
And Rahm Emanuel, your guy.
Which was, if you want propaganda to be effective, you don't have to convince people that what you are saying is true. You just have to flood the zone with so much poop. They used a different word, but you have to flood the zone with so much untruth constantly that at some point people don't believe anything.
Barack Obama speaks from his lived experience, doing exactly what he described Putin did. This is the man who told Americans they could keep their doctor before the Affordable, quote-unquote, Care Act, who downplayed Benghazi while Americans literally died, and who helped lay the foundation for Russiagate. You know, that little disinformation campaign that consumed the nation for years and led ultimately nowhere outside of the weaponization of the FBI to investigate allegations from the largely false Steele dossier. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Don't even get me started on his runway deals with Iran's mullahs. Now, from his post-presidency perch, he's sermonizing about flooding the zone with untruth, as if he wasn't the architect of the very institutional distrust he claims to lament. What we're witnessing isn't concern for democracy, it's legacy laundering. Obama understands that trust in institutions has collapsed, but he refuses to admit his role in that collapse, weaponizing the IRS against political opponents, expanding surveillance on journalists, and elevating style over substance while outsourcing chaos to bureaucrats. His critique of the post-truth era is just straight up projection, because the modern left doesn't want consensus, they want control over what qualifies as truth. The fact that he lumps Bannon and Putin into the same propaganda axis while ignoring the corporate media DNC machine he helped build is a masterclass in gaslighting. This moment isn't just about Obama, by the way. It's about a political class that can't accept its fall from cultural dominance, so it blames everyone else for the confusion it created. And speaking of confusion and Iran, there's a growing debate within the conservative movement about America's involvement in the Iran-Israel conflict, with Tucker Carlson warning against U.S. involvement in another foreign war, and Senator Ted Cruz offering a very different perspective on the situation.
How many people live in Iran, by the way? I don't know the population. At all? No, I don't know the population. You don't know the population of the country you seek
to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
It's not
okay.
even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay,
I
am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that...
We're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
this is
Israel.
High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay.
Now, I understand what Tucker is going after, but these attempts at gotchas feel more like a performance than a pursuit of truth. Still, the exchange reflects a real and necessary shift within the conservative movement, a long overdue reckoning with the way America has approached foreign policy for decades. By the way, this isn't about whether Ted Cruz knows Iran's population. It's about the fact that for years, both parties operated under a bipartisan assumption that America could shape the world through force, regardless of whether the average voter or policymaker could even locate the country on the map. That mindset gave us Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and a legacy of endless interventions with no clear endgame. Now, for the first time in a generation, voices like Tucker's are creating space on the right for restraint, prudence, and foreign policy rooted in national interest, not empire. The fact that Cruz and Carlson can openly disagree without a purity test is a sign of progress, not actual fracture. It means we're finally asking the right questions, not just who the enemy is, but whether our involvement serves the American people at all. In that sense, this moment is less about trivia and more about a cultural reawakening where war isn't the default and that conservative politics, different from the left, can actually make room for both strength and skepticism. Now, that clip obviously went viral, and The View had a very obvious meltdown about the whole situation in ways that you can't even imagine, but are actually relatively predictable when you hear it.
And it's slow.
But let's just remember, too, the Iranians literally throw gay people off of buildings. They don't adhere to basic human rights.
Listen, here's the thing. Let's not do that, because if we start with that, we have been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car.
Where the Iranian regime is today is nothing compared to the United States.
Keep hanging black people. So
it is not even the same. I couldn't step foot during this.
Wait. That's not what you mean to say. It is the same.
No, it's not. The year 2025 in the United States is nothing like if I step foot wearing this outfit in Tehran.
Listen, I'm sorry.
Well, they wear like I can't have my hair showing. I can't wear a skirt. I can't have my arms out.
I'm telling you,
I literally said it was up to the Iranian people.
Yes,
it is up to them.
And that's why I am saying that it is the same. Murdering someone for their difference is not good, whoever does it. It's not good. So that's why I said you weren't saying what I heard was not what you meant.
I think it's very different to live in the United States in 2025 than it is to live in Iran.
Not if you're black.
Not for everybody.
Not if you're black.
Guys, don't go to Tehran. Do not anyone at this table should go to Tehran.
Let me tell you about being in this country. This is the greatest country in the world.
Yeah.
But I know that. And we all know that. But every day, we are worried. Do we have to be worried about our kids? Are our kids going to get shot because they're running through somebody's neighborhood? They are not big deals, and I don't mean to say they're not big deals to you, because that's not what I meant.
And they are not doing well there either. They are not doing well in Iran. They are not educated. They cannot have property. They cannot leave them.
I'm talking about here.
Nobody wants to diminish the very real problems we have in this country. That is no one's intent. But I think it's important we remember there are places much darker than this country and people who deserve rights.
Not everybody feels that way. Not everybody feels that way.
How?
Listen, I'm sorry. You know, when you think about the fact that we got the vote in 1965,
We're in 2025.
They don't have free and fair elections in Iran. It's not even the same universe. They can't go out of their house. The women.
You know what? There's no way I can make you understand.
Yeah, because you're making it up.
It's like try to reverse roles with a black person in this country, let's say, because I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Just try to understand from their point of view. From that point of view, this country does not do them well. Does not go for them.
I completely acknowledge that.
And we shouldn't compare atrocities.
If you're talking about Iran, of course, is doing worse things. But relatively speaking, it feels bad.
Okay, but I think you know that Iran is significantly worse.
Is this really what The View needs to do to get views? At this point, watching this show feels less like tuning into a political conversation and more like watching the intellectual wreckage of progressive ideology in real time. What should have been a clear and sobering discussion about Iran's brutal theocratic regime, a regime that executes gay people, stones women, censors thought, and violently crushes dissent, somehow turned into a rhetorical gymnastics meet where panelists bent over backwards to draw moral equivalence between Tehran and Tulsa, between state-mandated headscarves and systemic racism in the United States. The phrase, "not if you're black," was thrown out like a moral trump card, as if America in 2025 is indistinguishable from a country where women can be imprisoned for dancing in public. That's not critique, by the way. That's just straight up delusion. This moment is a case study in what happens when identity politics becomes the only framework through which people are allowed to interpret the world. The logic goes like this: America has committed injustices in the past. Therefore, America has no standing to criticize injustice anywhere else now. That kind of thinking doesn't just flatten history, it completely absolves our current tyrants. It treats criticism of foreign oppression as a form of domestic betrayal, and it turns every conversation into a competitive hierarchy of victimhood. This isn't just bad faith, it's dangerous. Because if you can't tell the difference between an imperfect democracy and a totalitarian theocracy, then you have no framework for defending human rights at all. You've replaced moral clarity with performative guilt, and that vacuum is exactly what regimes like Iran rely on to deflect global pressure. And let's be clear, this isn't just a view problem. It's a reflection of the institutional rot that's poisoned public discourse for years. This kind of false equivalence is taught in universities, reinforced by legacy media, and repackaged by celebrities as brave commentary. It's how you get a generation that thinks it's revolutionary to bash the United States while ignoring the atrocities committed in countries where real dissent gets you jailed, tortured, or even killed. The idea that a black woman in America in 2025 on national television in full glam while making millions of dollars with a full corporate sponsorship can sincerely claim that she's just as oppressed as a woman in Iran who could be executed for merely showing her hair, that tells you everything about how detached leftist ideology has become from reality. And the irony, of course, is that the more the left insists on comparing America to regimes like Iran, the more they dilute their own credibility. You can't claim to fight for justice while refusing to name the evil that stares you in the face. You can't claim to be defenders of democracy while shrugging at authoritarianism as long as it's not your government. And you certainly can't pretend to care about women's rights, LGBTQ freedoms, or freedom of expression if your instinct is to turn every foreign abuse into a chance to self-flagellate about America's past. What they're doing here isn't nuance. It's a form of cultural narcissism where every story becomes a mirror to reflect their own grievance, their own politics, their own brand. It's a point of resistance for Marxism. It's factual evidence that that ideology can't self-reflect because actual self-reflection would mean accepting that America is actually a good place to live in. And maybe that's the bigger point here. What we're seeing isn't just a political divide, it's a civilizational one. One side still believes, even with all its flaws, that America is worth defending, as always. It's always worth defending. It's the greatest nation on earth. Meanwhile, the other side is so high of its own moral superiority supply that it's willing to compare free speech zones to state surveillance, campus protests to government crackdowns, and racial tension to religious tyranny. It's not that they hate America. It's that they've been trained to see it as permanently guilty. And as long as that worldview dominates our cultural institutions, our media, our school boards, our entertainment industry, then conversations like this won't just be common, they'll be the norm. So no, to make it absolutely clear, Iran and America are absolutely not the same, not even close. And if you can't say that plainly without 1,000 disclaimers, then maybe you're not the moral voice you think you are. Maybe you're just another echo in a collapsing conversation coming from the left, where clarity is controversial and truth is only allowed when it flatters your preferred narrative. So the question now is, what happens when a culture becomes too ashamed to defend itself, too confused to actually name evil, and too addicted to outrage to think clearly? What does it say about a society when its loudest voices would rather draw false equivalence than stand for something true? You don't have to love every part of America to recognize the difference between freedom and tyranny. But if you can't even do that, what exactly are you even defending? We're living in an era where moral relativism masquerades as empathy, where clarity is treated as aggression, and where entire institutions seem more committed to emotional theater than honest debate. So ask yourself, when you hear these narratives, be it on TV, be it in the classroom, be it online, who benefits from your specific confusion deriving from these narratives? Who profits when you believe that the country giving you the mic is just as bad as the one that would jail you for using it? If you can't answer that question, maybe it's time to stop clapping along to these fools on The View and their ilk and start thinking for yourself. You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.